Welcome back to your Pig Trail Nation report. Here for the Hogs Hoop report, special guest Kevin McPherson joins us because we had a really busy Friday, Kevin.
Busy Friday. You had recruiting, and you had Arkansas adding a second commitment from the 2026 class. And then we were both there, weren't we? Primetime at the Palace at Bud Walton Arena Friday night. So you tell me, what do we start with today? What do you want me to – what do we – you want to go recruiting since that went
Let's
down
start recruit.
earlier
Yep.
in the day? Or
Let's start with the recruit.
Look, this is big time. Another big time. It's John Calipari. Does he do anything that's not big time in recruiting? I don't think
Never.
so. Especially at the high school level, I consider him the greatest recruiter of all time. I say it all the time. And then you look at the wing position. Arkansas already off to a great start with in-state J.J. Andrews, a 5-star at a Little Rock Christian Academy. He's been committed since mid-May, and then you add to that, you fortify that wing position on Friday early. It was an East Coast, one of the most talented, probably maybe the most athletic wing in the country, Abdou Toure, 6'5", out of Notre Dame High School in West Haven, Connecticut. He made his announcement at a ceremony on that campus at Notre Dame High School. And, the home state school, UConn, Dan Hurley, Providence, the Friars made a push, but at the end, John Calipari gets his man. It seems to work out that way more times than not. A priority recruit for well over a year. But he announced Arkansas. And honestly, the locals there, I didn't know he was going to get such a wild response and wild, reaction from the kids at his school, but they went nuts when he announced Arkansas. He did a little tease before it started, and he was lifting the hats. He had hats on the table, and he raised up the hat for Providence, the hat for UConn, and the hat for Arkansas. And this was prior to making the announcement. And it seemed like the audience was more hyped about Arkansas than the other two options that are in the footprint area up there. So that kind of surprised me just a little bit. Again, when it's John Calipari, I think because he's a national brand, fans everywhere know who that is, and there's a reason to get excited that a player would go to him because he's got such a great track record of getting guys to the next level, getting them to the NBA. And this is what I think. I think this is why the player chose Calipari above the other options to stay closer to home. And now you've got a 1-2 punch at that wing spot out of this class. And if you just were and we're going to talk primetime at the Palace, but if last year, 2 true freshman wings for Arkansas, not 1, but 2 that came in with, were highly regarded, and they both played a lot. And one's success didn't create a lack of for the other. And you saw again at primetime at the Palace, both of those guys thriving when we were talking Carter Knox and Billy Richmond III. So here is Calipari again, doubling up at that wing spot in this 2026 class.
What do you see most from this most recent recruit that you like, that you think he'll be able to bring to Arkansas?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it. He's probably arguably the most athletic player, regardless of position, in this class. And both he and J.J. Andrews, who's been committed, they both have this elements to their game that make them, two of the best two-way players, offense and defense. So I think immediately Torey brings that lunch pail, hard-nosed, and then you throw in that elite athleticism. He takes on contact when he attacks the rim, so he's a fearless slasher. Both players are emerging with their skill level when you talk about perimeter shooting, but they're prototypical Calipari athletic wings. Their primary goal is to bring that athleticism, that physicality, get downhill, attack the paint, attack the rim. So it's right in his playbook. It doesn't surprise me at all that he prioritized both. But I think Torey, it's a great question you asked. I think he brings that element that Calipari seeks. He was recruiting other wings, but maybe Torey has more in his package in terms of what Calipari actually covets just about every recruiting cycle. And again, I go back to Carter Knox and Billy Richmond III. Both of these two, I keep throwing Andrews in there because it's another scenario that reminds me of Knox and Richmond, who came in the same class as well in 2024. Calipari knows what works for him. And so it's not that it's a carbon copy situation, but it's pretty close, and it's right in his wheelhouse.
Well, we talked about the guys who are going to be coming in, but how about the guys who are here? You just mentioned a couple of them, Knox and Richmond. They had some fun, and they were showing out at primetime at the Palace.
They were, and you had the dunk contest. That was fun. Billy Richmond III probably had, if I were looking at it from a standpoint of style points and force, there's an aesthetic part. It was almost like a Beauty and the Beast dunk because it was great to watch. It was kind of a poetry in motion, and at the end of it, he flushes it with force and power.
Hmm.
So he arguably had the best dunk. The problem was the last dunker, Trevor Brazil, who has no problem at 6'10" with a 7'4" wingspan of making a Sports Center top 10 highlight play.
Hmm.
Both he and Billy Richmond, I think, are going to have plenty of those this year. You got Brazil jumping over a 7-footer with another picturesque dunk. I knew when that happened and that dunk went down that he was going to win it just because he jumped over a 7-footer. If not for that, Billy Richmond III probably had style-wise the best dunk. And Carter Knox, his dunk wasn't too shabby. Now, we only saw 8 minutes of scrimmage work, but both of those players, Knox and Richmond, they have an edge to them. They look like they're all business. Yeah, they're out there having fun, but those dudes are tough, man. They're strong. They're athletic. Carter Knox is no slouch athletically. I think Billy Richmond III is arguably the best athlete in the SEC. But both of them play with an edge, and they showed it as true freshmen. They got better and better last year, but there's a lot more that went on Friday night. I'm going to throw it back to you. What did you like? What stood out to you about the event?
Well, before TB even went to go do his dunk, Petrino was about to step in and he was like, "You're not jumping over him. That's not happening. Someone's
No.
going to get hurt." All the guys came in and they're like, "No, no, no, this is too good. This is what we're here for. We got to let it happen." So I thought that was pretty funny. I thought Richmond showed out. He was my guy who I thought I took away the most from. But I definitely had my eye on Darius Acuff coming into it as well, the really highly recruited freshman.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. I think, it's hard to pull a lot out of an 8-minute scrimmage, and there wasn't a whole lot of defense. But, Billy Richmond, he's probably a fan favorite. It seemed like the fans really get louder for him, and he works so hard and he plays so hard. And I think that's going to rub off on others. I think a guy like Darius Acuff, he sees what's going to be expected from some of these older leaders on the defensive end, because offensively, there's a lot to like there. He hit a 3 in that scrimmage. Malik Thomas, the other freshman guard, hit a couple of threes. He won the 3-point shooting contest as well, kind of expected there. There's just a spoil of riches. And John Calipari, you mentioned him trying to hold back, and I don't know how much of that was, kind of scripted, how much of it was just, playing out in real time. But what's so cool about the beginning, before we saw anything, is Calipari continues to brag about this team and how much confidence he has in them. Says they have a chance to be really special. And he scheduled a tough non-conference schedule. When limited practices started in June and July, he started implementing more team and installing more team concept stuff. Last year, in his first year, they did a lot of individual. At that same time, a lot of individual development stuff. Now it was more team-centered. I think he has a lot of confidence in the retention he has. I think he has a lot of confidence in the 2 big men transfers, and then those freshmen. I just think he has a lot of belief in this team, and it showed when he spoke before anything actually went down, when they did introductions. Calipari's not one to me to exaggerate what he has. Last year, he didn't do that. He didn't if anything, he downplayed the situation because everything was brand new. This time around, I think his confidence is something you can trust. He's been around the block. He's been to final championship games. He's been to Final Fours with 3 different programs before Arkansas. Maybe that stood out, his messaging, as much as anything last night or Friday night.
Yeah, I completely agree. And how about the big guy, the transfer from South Carolina, Nick Pringle, came in and he got a standing ovation. The crowd was on their feet. They were cheering really loud for him too.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of
No,
character.
you're exactly right. I'm glad you brought that up because he's kind of been the guy that's really drawn a lot of praise for his work in the, not only the June and July limited practices when they got back for the fall semester. Calipari has said very recently, he's better than I thought he was. And then you saw the fan response. You just said it. When he was introduced, they went nuts. He finished 3rd in the dunk contest voting, and his dunk was really good too. I should have mentioned that when we were talking dunk contest. So I'm glad you didn't leave that let that slip out of our hands here to talk about how good Nick Pringle's really been. since he's gotten Arkansas. And again, in an 8-minute scrimmage, you're not going to judge hardly anybody harshly or too favorably based on the fact they weren't playing a lot of defense. But if you talk about the fans responding like they did, they're paying attention. They know that he's come in and really put in the work since becoming a Razorback.
Well, Bud Walton Arena was popping on Friday night, some might say. We're going to take a quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back into your Pig Trail Nation report. We're talking Hogs Hoops with Kevin McPherson. There's a lot going on, especially for preseason for this basketball team. And today they have a pro day where a ton of different NBA programs are going to be coming in and taking a look at these guys early on.
Yeah, all 30 teams. And that's a big deal. Again, John Calipari, his reputation as the best to not only recruit and get high-level guys in, but help develop them, get them the exposure, get them into, preferred draft slots in the NBA draft. A lot of one-and-dones over the years. And then his guys excel once they get to the NBA. And so, this is a big deal because FanDuel, and I think throughout the FanDuel the network that handles the, I guess what's called the league ticket now, the League Pass, a lot of the broadcasts for those games that are on League Pass. So FanDuel has a big part in the NBA, broadcast presentation. So FanDuel's actually televising this pro day today. Arkansas's having a pro day. Calipari tried to have one last year, but Arkansas had the injury bug. They didn't have a deep roster as it was, and they had to cancel it. So now in year 2, this is his first pro day at Arkansas. They've had him there before. This is different again because it's going to be televised nationally by FanDuel in its broadcast chain. So that's a big deal. But, it's an opportunity for every player on the team to showcase in front of, 30 teams. Some teams might send in GM. A lot of scouts will be there. Whoever they send, front office folks, it's an opportunity for Arkansas players to audition for the next level at some point. And so it's a really big deal for them, and it's a big deal for your program because it helps recruiting. It helps Calipari's brand as good as he is because he's able to get opportunities like this for his players that other schools aren't going to get. They don't have the kind of gravitas he has to get this, to have something like this. And, this was probably the first of many at Arkansas. And again, last year they missed out on a chance to have it, but this year I expect everybody to put their best foot forward. If we saw 8 minutes of scrimmage that didn't have a lot of defense, whatever 5-on-5, 4-on-4, whatever scrimmage atmosphere is going on today, they might do all kinds of stuff, drill work, testing, who knows. But any competitive stuff, I think it'll be a lot more legitimate in terms of effort and expectation because you've got to put your best foot forward. You're not going to go out there and watch on defense as your guys on the offensive side are throwing lob passes for dunks. You're going to have to try a little harder. So I think this is a positive, and it also gives the fans a chance because it's televised and the media to see a little bit more, probably a lot more than we were able to glean Friday night in what was a fun, more family atmosphere, not really competitive basketball.
Something like the pro day goes to show what Coach Cal brings to the program, not only his talents off the court, but all the eyes that he attracts as well. What's a big plus for the younger guys getting to do something like this so early on?
Again, I think it's because a lot of these players are going to go through the NBA draft process at some point, whether they're testing the waters to get feedback, whether they think they're ready. Carter Knox did that. He went through the NBA draft combine after his freshman season. He was in the draft pool, and then everyone knew he was coming back to school. This is just another opportunity for players to, look at the sport not only as fun, but as a business. Now, we know NIL already introduces that concept, right? They're getting paid for play, so to speak. But that's the ultimate level. And so it just gives them opportunities to understand what it's like to prepare, to perform, because there are eyes on them. And it also helps reinforce the idea, just because the pro guys and the pro day, once it ends, I might as well consider every game I play, because they're mostly televised. There's a lot of attention on it, a program like Arkansas. Every game they play is like a job interview for the next level. They have to bring their best. They have to not only prepare, but they have to go out and execute, have a positive impact, perform. No player is perfect, but the more they get these opportunities, the more it helps demonstrate what's needed to be eventually a professional. Not everybody's going to end up in the NBA, but you have opportunities to make your case. And I think this is just an example of Calipari helping his players along in their maturation, understanding, hey, here's an opportunity for you. Go make the most of it. The things we preach and practice every day about effort and all these, being a great teammate, communication, all these little things too, not just your performance, but the things that make you low maintenance and reliable. These pro folks, they pick up on little things like that in an event like this.
As someone who's been around the basketball world for a very long time, what are some of the key things that you would look for in a player if you were at one of these showcases?
Yeah, well, you want to see effort and like defensively, you want to see guys locked in, buying in. That again at this level in their development in their career, they're not going to be perfect. Most NBA teams, when they're considering draft pieces, they're looking at, some of the same stuff, like players that have superpowers, maybe an elite shooter, elite athleticism, size that makes you size and a combination of other things that makes you versatile defensively. So all those things, yes, they matter. But again, the little things on top of that, because they're going to go to other pro days. Let's say they see 5 players at 5 different universities that they're comparable. It might be something little, how someone comports themselves, how good they are as a teammate or something like that, that separates them. So that's why if I'm in the building, I'm looking at everything. And that's what these scouts are doing, because their job's on the line. They've got to identify players that can actually play at the next level, or what is it going to take for player 1, 2, or 3 that they're watching that they're not quite seeing the NBA transition yet, but maybe if they were a little better here and a little better there, they could see it. They're going to provide feedback to this coaching staff to get back to the players. And so they're looking for a lot of things, guys that could maybe be in the next draft and help them, or someone that they can identify and think, okay, they may be 2 years away, but I'm going to make a note about this player, give the feedback, and then we'll see what happens and if they get where they can be. So there's a lot of layering to this, not just for the next draft, but drafts after that. I talked to several NBA scouts pretty frequently, and it's interesting how they talk about development of guys. They don't close the door on a guy that's not an obvious NBA talent. They understand that there's a lot of players that eventually are going to make it, and they just need to get better here, maybe in 1 or 2 or 3 places for it to become obvious that they're an NBA level value.
Well, the pro day today, but a couple more weeks until we get to pack Budwalton Arena for their first game. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today. Stick with us after the break because there's tons going on around the Hill.